When Jewish people return from around the world to live in Israel, it's a joyful end of a long journey. One of the more famous stories is that of Natan Sharansky, whose immigration from Russia to Israel paved the way for the exodus of 2 million Soviet Jews. CBN's Scott Ross has that story.
Natan Sharansky has been connecting Jewish people to Israel for 50 years. There was a time, however, he didn't see anything good about his heritage.
I was born in 1948 in the Soviet Union, in Ukraine. We had nothing Jewish in our life. We were absolutely assimilated. No Jewish institutions existed, no Jewish culture, no synagogue. But there was one very Jewish thing in our life, and it was anti-Semitism. There was nothing positive in my being Jewish. There was only negative.
That changed in 1967 when Israel defeated the armies of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan in the Six-Day War, reuniting Jerusalem under Israeli sovereignty.
Here, Israel emerges victorious after the attempt of Arab countries to destroy it. And the Soviet Union made a lot of efforts to destroy Israel.
It also marked the time Sharansky and other Soviet Jews began their search for what it meant to be Jewish.
Everybody connects you to Israel and says how your soldiers could do it. And you want to understand why for the world it is my soldiers. And that's when we started reading about ourselves, our history. And suddenly you discover that you have such a unique history, which starts not from this communist dictatorship, which starts from exodus from Egypt, and this desire to be free, and you discover that there is a state of Israel, which is that you want to be part of it. That's what gives you strength to start fighting for your right of a Jew to live, to go to Israel.
Would the Soviet Union allow you to emigrate?
It was impossible. It was the regime who already killed tens of millions of citizens. So they would have no problem to kill another few hundred Jews, but we were luckier. Our struggle from the very first day became the struggle of all the Jews in the world, and with the time also of many non-Jews. And they succeeded to link all the interests of Soviet Union with the fate of Soviet Jews.
As an advocate for human rights and the Zionist movement, Sharansky also became known as a refusenik, a Jew who was refused permission to leave the Soviet Union and immigrate to Israel.
When they arrested me finally after a few years of my activities, they accused me in high treason and explained that I will not get out alive, I'll be sentenced to death, if I will not say publicly that they're right and we're wrong.
Sentenced to 14 years, he served 9, largely for spreading truth about human rights abuses in the Soviet Union. Now, I understand when you were in prison that one of the things that strengthened you was the Book of Psalms.
My Hebrew was not good enough, and I was reading, comparing different words, sentences. And it so happened that the first sentence which I understood fully was Psalm 23, and when I go through the valley of death, fear no evil because you are with me.
Were you a believer in God before this?
There is no physical explanation why you're ready to sacrifice your life if you don't understand that there are things which are much bigger than your physical survival. When I understood that I'm released, when they took away all the prison clothes, gave me civil clothes, and brought me to the airplane, so I was lying in the snow, refusing to move until they'll bring me back my psalm book.
You still have it?
It's always with me, yeah.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Sharansky and his wife Avital were married one day before his arrest. She then led the charge for his release.
They crossed the border and the airplane from Israel took me. And that's how I met, after 12 years, my wife, and that's how I met all our Jewish people. So the day which started in Soviet KGB prison finished near the Kotel with thousands of our friends celebrating my release.
His struggle played a major role in the fall of the Iron Curtain, which opened the door for 2 million Jews to leave the Soviet Union. Years later, Sharansky headed the Jewish Agency, the organization that brings new immigrants to Israel.
So it is really the history of Exodus repeated itself in modern history.
Yes. When you hear your enemies threaten and they're going to push you into the sea and destroy the state of Israel, how do you respond to that?
We have to stand against all this hypocrisy, against all this hatred, and we rely on us, on our faith, on our God, and on our friends.
When you look back through the history and you see where Israel is now, how do you feel about your country?
God speaks to us by His doings. Simply look what He's doing with Jewish people, and that's the best proof of His presence. What happened with Soviet Union? Soviet Union doesn't exist. See what happened with Israel. There is no country in the free world with such a successful, strong economy. And we brought so many Jews from so many different cultures, and how they all are becoming one people united with one vision. So that's the miracle.
Scott Ross for CBN in Jerusalem.
Alpha.